In recent years, the word mindfulness has become popular across the world. You will find it in classrooms, hospitals, corporate workshops, and self-help books. It's often promoted as a tool to reduce stress, manage emotions, improve productivity, or simply to feel more relaxed. And while these are certainly beneficial effects, there is something essential that gets lost when we reduce mindfulness to a lifestyle trend or therapeutic technique. The original purpose of mindfulness, as taught by the Buddha, was not just to feel calm. It was meant to lead the mind all the way to freedom. The kind of freedom that goes beyond pleasure and pain, beyond success and failure, beyond the ups and downs of daily life. It is the freedom of the heart and mind, a freedom from clinging, from craving, from suffering itself. But mindfulness alone is not enough. It is a crucial beginning, a vital foundation, but it is not the complete path. There is another companion that must walk beside mindfulness if we are to reach true liberation. That companion is wisdom. When mindfulness and wisdom work together, they become a powerful force. One sees what is happening clearly and steadily. The other understands the meaning of what is seen. Together, they uncover the truth that lies beneath the surface of our experiences. They cut through illusions. They reveal that what we often call me and mine is not as solid or permanent as we believe. And when this truth is seen, not just intellectually, but deeply, directly, and repeatedly, the mind begins to let go of its attachments. That letting go is not forced. It is not the result of discipline or belief. It arises naturally, like a hand releasing a hot object once it knows it's being burned. That is the beginning of liberation. So what do we mean when we say mindfulness? And what do we mean by wisdom? And how do these two work together to bring about this deep inner transformation? These are not questions to answer with quick definitions. They are questions to live with, to explore slowly, through meditation, through contemplation, and through daily life. But for the sake of this teaching, we will begin to unpack them step by step, in a way that is accessible and grounded in real human experience. Mindfulness, in its deepest sense, is the quality of remembering to return to what is really happening right now. It is not zoning out. It is not spacing out. It is not merely watching the breath or the body with passive attention. True mindfulness is an active kind of presence. It watches with care. It returns again and again to the present moment. It notices what the mind is doing. It sees when we're clinging to something. It sees when anger arises. It sees when fear takes over. And it doesn't judge any of these things. It simply knows. That knowing is the beginning of transformation. But it is not yet full transformation. Because even when we see what's happening, we might not understand it. We might observe the breath, the emotions, the thoughts, but we still identify with them. We still believe that I am this fear, or I am this sadness, or I am this desire. This is where wisdom must step in. Wisdom is the capacity to understand things as they truly are. It is not merely book knowledge. It is not collecting ideas or theories about the self or reality. It is the light that reveals the nature of the experience that mindfulness holds in attention. If mindfulness is the mirror that reflects the mind, wisdom is the eye that looks deeply into the reflection and sees what lies beneath. It sees that what we call the self is actually a collection of changing processes. It sees that everything we experience, every sound, thought, feeling, memory, is temporary, conditioned, and cannot be held onto. And this seeing, when repeated again and again, changes us at the root. It loosens the grip we have on the world. It softens the voice in our heads that says, "This must be mine, this must stay, or this must go." The Buddha was not interested in creating a belief system. He was not asking us to believe in dogmas or worship an external deity. His invitation was radical. Look directly at your experience, see its nature clearly, and be free. This is not a cold or abstract process. It is deeply human, deeply personal, and available to anyone willing to look with honesty and patience. It does not matter whether you come from the East or West, whether you believe in a religion or not. The path of mindfulness and wisdom is a universal path, rooted in reality itself. In the early discourses, the Buddha often described a way of living and practicing that rests on direct seeing. He didn't encourage blind faith. He encouraged a deep investigation into the nature of life. He said, "Look at how things arise and pass away. Look at how clinging leads to suffering. Look at how letting go leads to peace." And the way to see this clearly is through the union of mindfulness and wisdom. This union is not something we force. It is something we cultivate. We train the mind to become still enough, open enough, present enough, so that wisdom can arise naturally. Just like a still pond reflects the moon clearly, a quiet mind reveals the truths that have always been here, hidden beneath the surface. In that silence, we begin to taste a kind of freedom that is not dependent on the conditions of the world. It is not freedom from problems. It is freedom in the midst of problems. It is not the absence of pain, but the absence of unnecessary suffering. It is a state of clarity, of inner balance, of deep letting go. That is the path we will explore together in this teaching. It is not a path of perfection. It is not a path of force. It is a path of learning to observe, to understand, and to release. A path where mindfulness steadies the attention and wisdom guides the heart. A path where suffering becomes the teacher and every breath becomes a doorway to insight. A path that does not require becoming someone else, but seeing more clearly who you are not. As we begin this journey, let us remember, it is not about achieving something new. It is about uncovering what has always been true, but often ignored. The truth that liberation is not outside of us, but within. And the keys to that liberation are already in our hands. Mindfulness and wisdom, patiently cultivated, carefully combined, and courageously applied to every moment of our lives. Mindfulness, when spoken of in modern culture, often takes the shape of something soft and comforting. It is presented as a way to feel better, to be more productive, or to manage stress. These are not wrong, but they only scratch the surface of what true mindfulness means. In its original depth, mindfulness is not merely about comfort, relaxation, or mood regulation. It is a sharp, clear, persistent mental quality. It is not a momentary flash of awareness, but an ongoing discipline of attention. It is the mind's ability to return, over and over, to what is really happening right now, not to judge it, not to change it, but to know it exactly as it is. This kind of presence is not passive. It is alert. It is engaged. And more than anything, it is honest. The essence of mindfulness is in remembering, not remembering the past, but remembering to be present. It is the ability to remember what we are doing, to stay with our experience instead of drifting into fantasies, regrets, or projections. It is a kind of inner wakefulness that notices when the mind begins to wander and gently brings it back. Again and again, without irritation, without pressure, just the quiet return to this moment. When the mind remembers to come home, over and over, something begins to shift. We start to realize how much of our suffering comes not from what is happening, but from the stories we tell about it, the thoughts we spin around our experiences, the tight grip of wanting things to be different, the resistance to what is. True mindfulness is not just present moment awareness. It is present moment awareness with a certain quality. It sees things clearly. It notices not only what is happening, but how we relate to what is happening. It watches how the mind reacts. It sees the pushing and pulling, the habits and reflexes. It observes the patterns that keep replaying, whether in pain or in pleasure. And it does all this without getting involved. This is perhaps the most difficult part. Most of us are trained to immediately react, to judge, to fix, to escape. But mindfulness teaches a different way. It says, stop, look, and stay. Stay with the experience long enough to see its nature, long enough to understand that it is changing, that it is not as solid or personal as it seems. One of the most important qualities of mindfulness is its steadiness. The mind does not naturally rest. It runs. It jumps. It grabs onto whatever appears: sound, sight, sensation, memory. Mindfulness is like a thread that holds attention gently in place. It allows us to see not just the content of the mind, but the movement of the mind itself. When mindfulness is strong, it can hold even painful experiences without collapsing into them. It can watch fear without becoming afraid. It can watch anger without acting out. It can sit with grief without drowning in sorrow. This does not mean we become cold or indifferent. Quite the opposite. We become more alive, more connected, because we are not lost in reaction. We are right there, fully present, not turning away. Mindfulness protects the heart. When it is present, Unwholesome patterns find it harder to take root. We begin to see anger forming before it explodes. We sense jealousy creeping in before it poisons our thoughts. We notice craving stirring before it pulls us into unhealthy choices. Mindfulness is like a guardian at the gate of the mind. It does not fight the unwanted guests, but it sees them as they approach. And in that seeing, their power weakens. They are no longer unconscious habits. They are known, and therefore less dangerous. Over time, this awareness becomes a kind of inner refuge. We learn to trust it. We learn to rest in it. But mindfulness is not only about preventing harm. It is also the foundation for wisdom. Because only when the mind is steady and clear can it begin to truly investigate. Only when we are present can we begin to question, what is this experience made of? Is it permanent? Is it satisfying? Is it who I really am? Without mindfulness, we cannot even begin to ask these questions. We are too caught up, too distracted, too entangled. But with mindfulness, space opens up. And in that space, something very powerful happens. We begin to see. We begin to see that every feeling, every thought, every sensation has a beginning and an end. We begin to see that even strong emotions are like weather. They arise, they stay for a while, and they pass. We begin to see that the mind does not need to react to everything it experiences. That we can observe pain without panic. That we can feel sadness without sinking. That we can notice desire without obeying it. This is the great gift of mindfulness. It shows us that we are not at the mercy of our experience, that we can relate to life in a wiser way. To cultivate mindfulness is not just to sit quietly for a few minutes each day. It is to live with intention. It is to train the mind to return, again and again, to the simplicity of what is happening. This breath, this step, this feeling, this thought. It is to bring the same quality of attention to brushing your teeth as to sitting in meditation. It is to become intimate with your own experience, not to control it, not to perfect it, but to know it deeply. And in that knowing, the seeds of wisdom are planted. It is important to understand that mindfulness is not perfection. It is not a state of constant peace or joy. It is the willingness to be present with life, exactly as it is. Sometimes that means sitting with discomfort. Sometimes it means staying with boredom. Sometimes it means being gentle with our distractions and doubts. The power of mindfulness is not in how focused we are, but in how we relate to what arises. Are we judging? Are we resisting? Are we clinging? Or are we simply noticing, allowing, letting things come and go? The more we practice, the more natural this becomes. Mindfulness moves from being something we do to something we are. It becomes the ground beneath our thoughts, the quiet companion that stays with us in every situation. It is not dramatic. It does not shout. But it brings clarity. It brings stability. It brings a kind of quiet joy, not the joy of excitement, but the joy of being connected to reality, just as it is. Mindfulness is not the goal. It is the path. It is the way we begin to wake up. And as it deepens, as it becomes more continuous, it begins to reveal something deeper. It begins to point to truths we may have overlooked our entire lives. The truth that nothing lasts. The truth that nothing satisfies completely. The truth that what we call the self is not fixed, but ever-changing. These are not ideas to believe in. They are insights to discover through direct experience. And mindfulness is what leads us there. So let us not confuse mindfulness with mere relaxation. Let us not confuse it with feeling good. Sometimes mindfulness brings up pain. Sometimes it shows us things we would rather not see. But in the long run, it is the doorway to freedom. Because when we learn to stay, when we learn to look, when we learn to let go of resistance, something profound begins to unfold. We begin to trust the present moment. We begin to trust our capacity to meet life as it is. And in that trust, we find a new kind of peace, not the peace of escape, but the peace of understanding. That is the heart of mindfulness, and it is only the beginning. Wisdom is often misunderstood. Some think it means having lots of information. Others believe it means being clever or quick to solve problems. But in the context of inner freedom, the kind of freedom the Buddha pointed to, wisdom means something far deeper than mental sharpness or intellectual ability. It is not about how much you know, but how clearly you see. It is not about being smart, but about being awake. True wisdom is a kind of direct seeing into the nature of things. It is the ability to look at any experience, whether joyful or painful, ordinary or intense, and understand what it really is. Not what we imagine it to be, not what we want it to be, but what it actually is. This kind of seeing doesn't require complicated thinking. It requires quiet. It requires honesty. And it requires the willingness to look without turning away. Wisdom grows from mindfulness. Once the mind is stable enough to stay with the present moment, once we're able to observe our thoughts and emotions without being completely swept away by them, a new kind of clarity begins to emerge. We start to notice patterns. We see how thoughts come and go. We see how feelings rise and fade. We begin to realize that no experience, no matter how powerful or personal it seems, lasts forever. And with that realization, something begins to loosen in us. Wisdom notices the impermanent nature of all things, not just as a theory, but as a living reality. You feel joy, and then it changes. You feel pain, and then it changes. You have a thought, and it's gone. Even the body, which we often treat as solid and reliable, is changing constantly, breath by breath, moment by moment. This understanding doesn't make life dull. It makes it real. It helps us stop chasing after things as if they could give us permanent satisfaction. It helps us stop clinging to what is already slipping through our fingers. This doesn't mean we stop enjoying life. It means we enjoy it without holding on so tightly. We begin to live with a light touch, knowing that everything is passing. This kind of wisdom brings a quiet kind of peace, not because everything is perfect, but because we no longer expect it to be. We no longer demand that life give us lasting pleasure, or that people behave exactly as we wish. We start to understand that much of our suffering comes from wanting things to stay the same, when nothing actually does. But wisdom doesn't only see change. It also sees the unsatisfactory nature of clinging. We start to notice that even when we get what we want, it doesn't bring lasting contentment. We want something, we get it. And then we want something else. The cycle repeats. It's exhausting. Wisdom sees that this constant grasping, this endless reaching for more, never truly satisfies. It offers moments of pleasure, yes, but not lasting peace. And so wisdom starts to let go, not out of bitterness or rejection, but out of deep understanding. It knows that holding on only brings more tension, more struggle, more pain. And perhaps most importantly, wisdom begins to question the very sense of self that stands at the center of all this grasping. Who is the one who wants? Who is the one who suffers? Who is the one who fears or clings or hopes or resists? At first, these questions might feel strange, even uncomfortable. But if we look closely at our own experience, we start to see that what we call self is not as solid as it seems. It is made up of thoughts, emotions, sensations, memories, all of which are changing, all of which are dependent on conditions. There is no single thing we can point to and say, "That's me, always the same." This realization, though it may seem unsettling at first, is actually a doorway to great freedom. Because when there's no fixed self to defend, there's nothing to protect, nothing to prove, nothing to fear. This is not something to believe. It is something to see for yourself. Wisdom is not built on faith. It is built on direct experience. Like someone waking from a dream, wisdom opens the eyes to what has been true all along. It doesn't require you to be a scholar. It doesn't require you to have read ancient texts. It only requires that you look deeply, with a steady mind and a sincere heart. There are, of course, different levels of wisdom. At first, we hear teachings from others. We listen. We read. We reflect. This kind of wisdom is valuable. It sets the direction. But it is still borrowed. It is not yet our own. The next level comes when we begin to understand things through personal reflection. We take what we've heard and examine it in the light of our own life. But even this is not the deepest kind. The wisdom that truly transforms is the one that arises from direct insight. It happens in a moment of clear seeing, when the mind is quiet, open, and still enough to notice the truth. That truth is often simple, but powerful. It is the recognition that nothing in this world can offer lasting security, that everything we hold on to will change, that all experiences, whether beautiful or painful, are part of a flowing stream, and that in the middle of this stream, there is peace, not by grasping at the water, but by letting it flow. Wisdom does not mean detaching from life in a cold or distant way. It means engaging with life more honestly, more gently, and more freely. It means knowing that joy is a gift, but not a possession. That pain is a teacher, but not an enemy. That every moment is an opportunity to see clearly, and through that clarity, to let go, not as a rejection, but as a release. A release of the tight knot we carry in our chest, the one that says, "This must go my way." Wisdom loosens that knot. It opens the heart. It frees the mind. It is important to remember that wisdom is not about speed. It is not about forcing insight to happen. Like a tree that grows slowly, it takes time. It takes patience. It takes care. And just like a tree, it needs the right conditions: sunlight, soil, water. In the same way, wisdom grows in the soil of mindfulness, watered by presence, supported by honesty. When we practice returning to this moment again and again, when we stay open to life as it is, the ground becomes fertile. And one day, without effort, a new understanding blossoms. That is wisdom. So let us not chase wisdom as a goal. Let us not treat it as something to achieve. Let us instead cultivate the conditions for it to arise. Let us live with mindful attention, with curious eyes, because it brings the light of freedom into even the darkest corners of our experience. When mindfulness and wisdom begin to work together, something truly profound takes place. Alone, each has its power. Mindfulness steadies the mind. It brings presence, clarity, and the ability to stay with what is happening. Wisdom penetrates beneath the surface. It understands the truth behind the experience. But when the two move together in harmony, moment by moment, breath by breath, they become the heart of the path to freedom. One supports, the other reveals. One watches, the other knows. Together, they shine a light into the nature of reality, not through philosophy, but through quiet, direct experience. Think of mindfulness as the lamp and wisdom as the flame. Without the lamp, there is no steady place for the flame to rest. And without the flame, the lamp remains dark. Mindfulness holds the present moment with calm attention. It sees clearly, without distortion. It knows, this is a thought, this is a feeling, this is pain, this is pleasure. It doesn't argue with reality, it simply meets it. But this clear seeing would still remain incomplete unless it is followed by deeper knowing, wisdom, the part of the mind that begins to question, to investigate, to understand. What is the nature of this experience? What is it made of? Is it lasting? Is it truly mine? At first, mindfulness alone can be peaceful, even comforting. When we focus on the breath or pay attention to the body, we may feel more grounded, more calm. But without wisdom, this calm can become an end in itself. We may try to hold on to peaceful states, or expect mindfulness to protect us from all difficulties. But life does not work that way. Pain still comes. Change still happens. Even when we are mindful, the world moves on. It is only wisdom that begins to break the illusion that anything can be controlled or owned. Wisdom sees that the point of mindfulness is not to avoid pain or seek pleasure, but to understand both. In practice, the union of mindfulness and wisdom begins simply. You sit, and you begin to notice the breath. That is mindfulness. Then you begin to observe how the breath changes, sometimes deep, sometimes shallow. You start to notice how the mind reacts, sometimes calm, sometimes restless. And then, something deeper begins to awaken. You start to see that no matter how you feel, the feeling does not last. You start to realize that everything that arises in the body or the mind is passing. This realization is not an idea, it is a direct experience. And that is wisdom in motion. When this kind of seeing becomes steady, it changes the way we relate to life. We begin to notice that even the most intense emotions are just visitors. Anger comes, stays a while, and leaves. Fear comes, stirs the body, tightens the chest, and then fades. Joy arises, blooms in the heart, and then passes. We begin to recognize this flow, not with detachment or coldness, but with intimacy and understanding. And through this understanding, we begin to let go, not because we are supposed to, not because someone told us to, but because we see with our own eyes that holding on only leads to tension. This is the quiet miracle of combining mindfulness with wisdom. Together, they remove the need for struggle. The mind no longer fights to hold on to what feels good, nor does it push away what feels unpleasant. Instead, it watches, it understands, it allows, and in that allowing, a kind of deep balance begins to form. A balance that is not shaken by praise or blame, by success or failure, by gain or loss. The world may still move, but something in us remains steady. With this steadiness comes a new kind of insight, not just about individual moments, but about the whole structure of our experience. We begin to see that the idea of me at the center of everything is not as solid as we once thought. We start to realize that thoughts about my story, my future, my past, are also passing events. Feelings of pride, shame, doubt, hope, and fear, they all come and go. The more we observe them, the more we see that they are not who we are. They are simply patterns. And seeing this, the weight we carry begins to lift. This kind of insight does not need to be dramatic. It does not always come in a flash. Often, it is gentle, quiet, and gradual. It happens over weeks, months, years of careful observation. But each time we see clearly, even for a moment, that something we believe to be permanent is actually changing, that something we clung to is not truly ours, a piece of the illusion begins to fall away. And as illusion falls away, peace arises in its place. There is another way mindfulness and wisdom work together. They begin to reveal the causes behind suffering. Normally, when pain arises, whether physical or emotional, we immediately react. We resist it. We blame something or someone. We try to escape. But when mindfulness holds the experience and wisdom observes it closely, we begin to see the root of our suffering. Not the pain itself, but the craving, the grasping, the refusal to accept what is. We see how the mind says, this shouldn't be happening, or this must stay. And in that moment, we see that it's not the experience that causes our suffering, it's the clinging. This understanding, when deepened through repeated seeing, is what sets the mind free. The freedom that comes from this union is not a fantasy. It is not something reserved for saints or special people. It is something any human being can cultivate. It is something that grows quietly in the soil of patient practice. It is not about escaping the world. It is about meeting the world with eyes wide open, with a heart that understands, with a mind that no longer needs to control every outcome. It is about learning to live in the midst of change, uncertainty, and imperfection, and still feel peace. What makes this path so remarkable is that it doesn't require us to become anyone else. It asks us only to observe, to stay close to our experience, to be honest, and to look deeply. The rest unfolds by itself. When mindfulness is present and wisdom is alive, the process of letting go becomes natural. We no longer need to force anything. The heart begins to release what it once clung to, not because we are trying to be spiritual, but because we understand that nothing can be held forever. In this space of understanding, love arises, not the kind of love that clings or demands, but the kind of love that allows. Compassion arises, not from pity, but from seeing that all beings, like ourselves, are caught in patterns they didn't create. And peace arises, not from escaping life, but from seeing life clearly and no longer resisting it. This is the fruit of the union of mindfulness and wisdom. Not a cold detachment from the world, but a tender, fearless presence within it. A presence that can hold both beauty and pain. A presence that does not flinch. A presence that knows what it is and what it is not. A presence that is no longer bound by illusion. And this presence, cultivated moment by moment, becomes the path. A path that leads not toward some distant goal, but toward the very heart of freedom itself. To bring mindfulness and wisdom into daily life is not about adding more tasks to an already busy schedule. It is about transforming the way we relate to everything we already do. The truth is, life itself gives us countless opportunities to wake up, if we know how to use them. The ordinary moments, the simple tasks, the conversations, the frustrations, the joys, each of these is a doorway. What matters is not what we do, but how we do it. What matters is the quality of attention we bring, and the depth of understanding that grows from it. The first step is to slow down, not in action, but in awareness. We do not need to walk slowly, speak slowly, or eat slowly. We simply need to be fully present with what we are doing. When we brush our teeth, can we feel the movement of the hand, the taste of the toothpaste, the touch of the water? This is not about making life special or sacred. It is about seeing that life is already happening now. When the mind is not lost in the past or leaning into the future, the present moment opens. And in that opening, we begin to see clearly. The next step is to bring this clarity into the way we relate to our experiences. When we feel tired, do we push it away or do we notice it with kindness? When we feel irritation, do we act it out or do we become curious? This curiosity is the beginning of wisdom. It allows us to pause and ask, what is really happening right now? Where is this feeling in the body? What thoughts are feeding it? Is it growing because of resistance? In that moment of investigation, we are not being passive. We are not letting life roll over us. We are stepping back just enough to observe, to understand. And in that understanding, we find freedom. One of the most powerful places to practice this is in relationships. Human interaction reveals our patterns more clearly than almost anything else. When someone criticizes us, the reaction is instant. We might feel the urge to defend, to explain, or to attack. But if mindfulness is present, even for a second, we can feel the heat in the chest, the tightening of the jaw, the speed of thought. And if wisdom follows, we begin to see. This is not about truth. This is about the pain of feeling judged. That simple insight can dissolve a mountain of defensiveness. And we begin to respond with care rather than react out of habit. The same is true with desire. We see something we want, maybe a possession, maybe a person's attention, maybe a certain outcome. If we are not aware, we chase it. We believe, if I get this, I will be happy. But when mindfulness is strong, we notice the arising of that wanting. We feel the pull in the belly, the craving in the heart. And then wisdom asks, will this really satisfy me? Or is this another illusion? This question does not require a philosophical answer. It simply invites a deeper honesty. Often, we see that we are chasing a shadow, and the chasing itself is the cause of restlessness. In daily life, these opportunities to observe are endless. When we walk, we can feel the contact between our feet and the ground. When we eat, we can taste each bite. Notice the moment we feel full. Notice the grasping for more. When we work, we can be aware of the difference between calm focus and anxious striving. We begin to notice how often we operate on automatic, reacting to emails, to messages, to news, to small irritations, without really being present. Each of these is a moment where mindfulness can step in and where wisdom can illuminate what's underneath. This kind of practice does not need silence or solitude. It thrives in the middle of life. In traffic, in conversations, in the supermarket, at the dinner table. These are the real temples. These are the real retreats. It is here that we see what the mind is doing. It is here that we see how suffering is created. And it is here that we begin to let go, not through force, but through clarity. Sometimes people think that wisdom comes from reading books or hearing profound teachings. But the deepest wisdom comes from seeing for yourself. It comes from watching your own mind day after day, seeing the same pattern arise, and understanding it a little more each time. It comes from noticing how blame turns into bitterness, how fear hides behind anger, how pride masks insecurity. These are not faults, they are simply habits. And habits can be understood. And what is truly understood begins to lose its power. One of the great discoveries on this path is that even the most difficult experiences can become teachers. Pain can teach presence. Loss can teach letting go. Failure can teach humility. Each time something unwanted arises, we have a choice. We can turn away, deny, suppress, or we can turn toward it with awareness and interest. And in turning toward it, we reclaim our power. We stop being victims of circumstances. We become students of life. This shift is not dramatic, but it is transformative. It turns daily life into a path of awakening. It reveals that we don't need to go anywhere to find freedom. We just need to see clearly what is already here. And the more we see, the more natural it becomes to release what we once held so tightly. Not because someone said we should, but because we see it's not worth carrying anymore. Over time, something deeper begins to grow, a quiet confidence. Not the confidence of ego, but the confidence of experience. We know that no matter what arises, we can meet it. We may not enjoy every moment, but we do not fear it, because we know how to stay present. We know how to look deeply. We know how to learn. And in that knowing, we find something unshakable. This is how mindfulness and wisdom are cultivated in real life. Not by escaping the world, but by living in it fully, with eyes open, with a heart that feels, with a mind that questions. This is not a burden, it is a joy. It is the joy of waking up, the joy of seeing clearly, the joy of being here, just as we are, in this moment. And this moment is enough. Always enough. Even with the best intentions, the path of mindfulness and wisdom is not a straight line. It bends, it falters, and sometimes it disappears altogether from view. Many who begin the journey find that while moments of clarity arise, they are often followed by long stretches of forgetfulness. One moment we are present, awake, aware, and the next, we are completely lost in thought, driven by emotion, or trapped in an old habit. This forgetting is not a failure. It is part of the process, but it must be understood, so it does not become a reason to give up. The truth is that the mind is restless by nature. It does not want to stay where it is. It wants to jump forward into plans, drift backward into memories, get lost in dreams, cling to comfort, avoid discomfort. This constant movement is not a flaw. It is simply how the mind has learned to survive. But if we are not aware of this movement, we become prisoners of it. We follow wherever it leads, unaware that we've lost the path. One of the greatest obstacles is distraction. In the modern world, we are surrounded by noise, digital noise, mental noise, emotional noise. Our devices are designed to pull attention away from this moment. Notifications, messages, news, entertainment, these things promise stimulation, but they steal our presence. Over time, our ability to stay with what is real becomes weaker. The mind grows addicted to being elsewhere, and in that state, both mindfulness and wisdom vanish. Another obstacle is resistance. Not every moment feels pleasant, and the mind quickly learns to avoid what is painful, whether it is physical discomfort, emotional wounds, or deep inner conflict. Our natural response is to push it away. We distract, deny, or numb ourselves. But the truth is that everything we avoid still lives within us. Avoiding it only gives it more power. Mindfulness invites us to turn toward our pain, not to suffer more, but to understand more. Yet resistance often keeps us from doing so. It whispers that it is too much, too hard, too painful. And we believe it. Closely related to resistance is doubt. Doubt tells us that the path won't work, that we are not capable, that we are wasting our time. Sometimes this doubt takes the form of self-judgment. I can't do this. Sometimes it appears as skepticism. What's the point? And sometimes it arises subtly, like a quiet erosion of confidence. The problem with doubt is not the question it raises, but the way it freezes us. When we believe it, we stop practicing. We stop looking. We stop learning. Doubt is not the enemy of wisdom. It is simply a sign that we have lost connection with direct experience. Another obstacle is craving. Craving is not only about wanting pleasure. It is the constant urge for something more, something else, something better. It can take the form of wanting to feel peaceful, wanting to achieve some spiritual state, wanting the mind to be quiet, or wanting others to see us a certain way. Craving pulls us away from where we are. It creates tension, frustration, and dissatisfaction. The tragedy is that even our desire to be mindful can become a kind of craving. We chase the present moment instead of relaxing into it. Wisdom begins when we see that nothing needs to be added, only seen. Then there is anger, often hidden beneath our reactions. We get angry at ourselves for forgetting, for being distracted, for feeling weak. We get angry at others for not understanding, for disturbing us, for not behaving the way we expect. We even get angry at life, for being uncertain, for being unfair, for not going according to plan. Anger, when unexamined, fuels separation. It divides us from others and from ourselves. But if mindfulness is present, even briefly, we can see that anger is often just pain in disguise. And wisdom begins when we stop blaming and start understanding. Fatigue is another enemy of mindfulness. It dulls our attention, clouds our awareness, and drains our energy. But not all fatigue is physical. There is emotional fatigue, the tiredness of holding too much inside. There is mental fatigue, the strain of constant thinking, planning, worrying. There is even spiritual fatigue, the weariness that comes from trying too hard to be good, to be wise, to be free. If we do not recognize these, we may push ourselves beyond what is skillful and collapse into despair. Wisdom teaches us to rest, not just the body, but the heart. Habits are also powerful obstacles. For years, maybe decades, the mind has followed the same patterns, reacting, judging, avoiding, clinging. These patterns do not vanish overnight. Even when we understand them intellectually, they can still pull us into action before we realize it. It is easy to become disheartened. Why am I still like this? But this is where patience becomes crucial. Wisdom does not grow in a straight line. It deepens through repetition, through meeting the same challenge again and again, with a little more understanding each time. Perhaps one of the most dangerous obstacles is spiritual pride. When we begin to experience some peace, some clarity, some insight, it is easy to think, now I understand. Now I'm advanced. Now I'm better than before, or better than others. This is not true wisdom. It is the ego dressed in spiritual clothing. Real wisdom is always humble. It knows that it is still learning, still discovering, still seeing. It never says, I have arrived. Instead, it bows to the mystery of life, to the vastness of the mind, to the depth of the present moment. What can we do when we face these obstacles? The first step is to see them clearly. Most of the time, we are trapped by them because we don't recognize them. We think they are the truth. But when we shine the light of awareness on them, when we name the distraction, notice the doubt, observe the craving, they begin to lose their grip. We don't need to fight them. We don't need to be free of them before we practice. In fact, they are part of the practice. Each obstacle is a mirror, showing us where we still cling, where we still resist, where we still forget. The second step is to respond with kindness. Not every moment will be mindful. Not every thought will be wise. But we can always begin again. Instead of judging ourselves for being lost, we can simply return to this breath, this step, this feeling. This gentle returning is the essence of the path. We fall, we rise, we fall again, but we keep walking. Not because we are perfect, but because we are sincere. Not because we know everything, but because we are willing to learn from everything. The final step is to trust the process. Mindfulness and wisdom are not things we add to ourselves. They are qualities we uncover. They are already within us, waiting to be awakened. Every time we see clearly, every time we understand a little more, the inner light grows stronger. Even if it flickers, even if it dims, it is never completely gone. And with each challenge, each mistake, each return, it grows more steady. To walk this path is not to escape the world, but to see the world with new eyes. It is not to become perfect, but to become real. The obstacles we face are not blocks in the way, they are the way. They are the fire that forges clarity. They are the shadows that teach us to value the light. And when we meet them with mindfulness and wisdom, we discover that what once held us down now lifts us up. This is how liberation grows, not in spite of our struggles, but through them. There comes a moment, often quiet, unexpected, and brief, when everything becomes clear. It may happen while sitting in stillness, walking under the trees, listening to the sound of rain, or in the middle of a difficult emotion. Suddenly, the mind stops grasping. The need to control, to fix, to become, falls away. The noise fades. What remains is a bare awareness, calm and awake, looking directly at what is. In that moment, there is no judgment, no resistance, no confusion. There is just seeing. And in that simple seeing, wisdom arises. Not from books, not from effort, but from the deep silence of direct understanding. This kind of insight does not shout. It does not come with fire or drama. It is more like a light turning on in a dark room. You realize, I was never trapped. I was only not looking. The problems, the fears, the desires, they don't vanish. But they are seen in their true size. What once looked like a mountain now appears as a passing cloud. What once felt heavy becomes transparent. The self that you were defending, chasing, protecting, it is seen as a mental image, not a fixed thing. The thoughts that once controlled your life are now just thoughts, impermanent, empty, arising and passing. And for a moment, you are free. This freedom is not the end of thought. It is the freedom to not be pulled by thought. You no longer believe every story the mind tells. You see that your anger was not truly about others. You see that your fear was not about the future. You see that what you were searching for was never outside you. Insight shows you the chain that once bound you, and also shows you that the chain was made of smoke. There was nothing holding you, except the belief that you were held. In that moment, the endless search softens. You stop trying to become someone. You stop chasing peace as if it were somewhere else. You are simply present, fully, gently, without needing anything more. And in that presence, wisdom blooms. It tells you not in words, but in feeling. This is what you've been missing. Not some higher state. Not some perfect experience, but this ordinary, undivided awareness. And this seeing cannot be unseen. Even if it fades, even if old habits return, you now know there is a different way to live. The path is no longer a theory. It is real. You've seen it with your own eyes. Sometimes this moment of insight is small, a single breath truly felt, a moment of stillness in the middle of chaos, a flash of understanding in the heart. Sometimes it is deep, like stepping out of a dream and realizing you've been asleep for years. In both cases, it changes something inside you. The world is the same, but how you see it is different. And because your view has shifted, your choices begin to shift too. You no longer react from blindness. You no longer follow every desire or run from every discomfort. You begin to live with intention, clarity, and care. Insight also brings humility. You see how long you were caught in illusions, how often you believed what wasn't true, how much suffering came from misunderstanding. But instead of feeling ashamed, you feel grateful. Grateful to see clearly, even if just for a moment. Grateful to know there is another way. And this gratitude becomes part of your strength. It gives rise to compassion, not just for yourself, but for others who are still caught, still struggling, still believing the voice in their heads. You no longer look down on them. You see them as fellow travelers, just as lost as you once were, and maybe still are. That is wisdom too. This kind of wisdom does not grow from reading or hearing alone. It grows from meeting your experience fully, from watching your thoughts like waves on the ocean, from observing your reactions without being controlled by them, from feeling every sensation, even the painful ones, without needing them to change. Slowly, your mind becomes steady enough, quiet enough, honest enough to see. And when it sees, it cuts through illusion like a knife through paper. Not because the illusions are strong, but because you stop clinging to them. And here is the deepest truth. The moment of insight is not something special you create. It is something natural that is uncovered. It is not added to you. It is revealed in you. Like the sky behind the clouds, it has always been there. What hides it is not its absence, but your constant movement, your endless noise, your forgetting. But when mindfulness and wisdom meet in stillness, the clouds part. You see clearly, not with the eyes, but with the heart. In that seeing, even suffering is understood differently. It is no longer your enemy. It is your teacher. Every craving, every fear, every painful memory is a doorway, if you are willing to enter it without resistance. Insight shows you that pain is not punishment. It is a signal. It points to where you are clinging, where you are confused, where you still believe the illusion of control. And when you meet it with awareness, when you no longer fight it, the pain becomes lighter. It transforms from a weight to a lesson. This is how wisdom liberates, not by avoiding pain, but by understanding it so deeply that it loses its power to bind. The path is not about collecting insights like trophies. It is about letting insight transform how you live. One moment of true seeing can change a lifetime of habits. One moment of freedom can shift the direction of your heart. But it is not the end. The insight must be lived, practiced, returned to. Life will still challenge you. The mind will still forget. Old patterns will still whisper. But now, you know something different. You have seen through the illusion, even briefly. And that seeing becomes the seed of a new way to live. Not driven by fear, not caught by craving, not lost in thoughts, but rooted in presence and guided by truth. This is the power of real wisdom. It is not about knowing more. It is about seeing more clearly. And when that clarity meets compassion, when that presence is steady, the heart no longer needs to chase freedom. It realizes that freedom is not far away. It is here, in this very breath, in this very step, in this very act of seeing what is true. There is a path that does not fall into extremes. It avoids both indulgence in pleasure and rejection through pain. It is not a path of escape, nor a path of self-denial. It is the middle way, the way of balance, clarity, and quiet strength. It is not dramatic, but it is deep. It does not promise fast rewards, but it leads to peace. And this path is not somewhere far. It can be walked here and now, in the midst of ordinary life, while washing dishes, caring for children, working, resting, listening, or speaking. What makes it the path is how you walk it, with awareness and with wisdom. Mindfulness alone is not enough. One can pay attention without truly understanding. You can be present with anger, but still be ruled by it. You can be fully aware of your stress, but still feed it. This is why wisdom must walk alongside mindfulness. Mindfulness notices. Wisdom sees through. Mindfulness collects the data of experience. Wisdom reads the pattern. One is the eye that looks. The other is the eye that sees. In daily life, this balance is essential. Every moment brings choices, whether to react or to respond, to speak or to stay silent, to chase or to let go. Most of these choices happen quickly. The mind is fast and habit is strong. But when you train yourself to pause, even for a breath, you open space. In that space, you can see more clearly. You can ask yourself, is this action helpful? Is this thought true? Is this feeling leading me to more clarity or more confusion? This is how the path is walked, not by avoiding life, but by walking through it with a quiet inner light. You will make mistakes. You will forget. You will fall into old patterns. That is not failure. That is learning. The path is not about being perfect. It is about becoming honest. When you see your anger clearly and don't act it out blindly, that is growth. When you notice your fear and stay with it instead of running, that is courage. When you realize you've lost your way and gently return to presence, that is wisdom in action. This path also teaches you not to force. Life is not a machine to be controlled. Emotions do not vanish just because you watch them. The mind does not calm down on command. Insight cannot be forced into existence. But what you can do is cultivate the conditions. Just as a gardener cannot force the flower to bloom, but can care for the soil, the water, the light, you too can care for the ground of your mind. Be steady, be kind, be patient, and in that steady attention, wisdom grows. There is no need to withdraw from the world. The world is your teacher. Every relationship, every task, every challenge shows you your mind. It shows you where you cling, where you judge, where you resist. But it also shows you your strength, your openness, your capacity to love. Walking the middle path means seeing all of this without being swept away. It means participating in life fully, but not being entangled in it. You feel, but you are not consumed. You care, but you are not attached. You act, but you do not crave results. This is not coldness. It is deep warmth, free from control. The middle path is quiet, and because it is quiet, the world may not notice, but you will notice. You will begin to feel a different kind of joy, not the joy of stimulation, but the joy of simplicity, the joy of being awake to the moment, the joy of not needing anything more than this breath. And from that place, your actions begin to carry a different energy. You speak with more care. You listen with more presence. You live with less tension, and others can feel it, even if they cannot name it. Wisdom also teaches humility. You begin to see how much you do not know, how often you act from assumption, how quickly the mind judges. But instead of being ashamed, you become more open. You become curious rather than certain, gentle rather than proud. And this humility is not weakness. It is strength, because it allows you to keep learning, to keep seeing, to keep growing. And still, life will challenge you. The path will test you. Some days will be heavy. Some emotions will be intense. But even in those moments, mindfulness and wisdom remain your companions. You may fall, but you now know how to rise. You may get lost, but you now know how to return. Each time you meet the difficulty with awareness, and each time you reflect with honesty, you deepen your roots. You become like a tree, flexible in the wind, but unmoved in its ground. The middle path does not offer escape. It offers freedom within. It does not promise perfection. It offers peace with imperfection. It does not ask you to be someone else. It invites you to be fully present with who you are, and from that presence, to act wisely. That is where transformation happens, not through pressure, but through understanding. Not through striving, but through seeing. Not through rejecting life, but through meeting it with an open heart. When mindfulness and wisdom walk together, the path becomes clear, not because the world changes, but because your relationship to it changes. You are no longer a prisoner of thought. You are no longer lost in reaction. You are no longer driven by endless desire. You begin to live with balance, not too tight, not too loose. You begin to rest in awareness, not caught in the past, not chasing the future. You begin to trust life, not because it is always kind, but because you are learning how to meet it with clarity. This is the middle path. It is not a line you follow. It is a living dance between stillness and movement, silence and action, inner clarity and outer responsibility. It is not a theory. It is a practice. It is not something you finish. It is something you live. And as you live it, step by step, breath by breath, you discover that freedom was never far away. It was here, waiting for you to see. The mind that frees itself is not a mind that escapes. It is not a mind that avoids pain or clings to pleasure. It is a mind that sees things clearly, and in seeing clearly, is no longer trapped. Freedom does not come from what happens to you. It comes from how you understand what happens. It is not something someone can give you. It is something you awaken within yourself. And it happens not all at once, but moment by moment, through deep attention and deep seeing. In each moment of your life, something is arising, an emotion, a thought, a sound, a sensation. The untrained mind reacts to all of it. It grasps at what feels good, it resists what feels bad. It escapes from discomfort, and it chases distraction. It is always doing something, planning, regretting, comparing, dreaming. Rarely does it just rest in the present. And yet, the present is the only place where true freedom can unfold. The past is a shadow. The future is a dream. But this moment, this breath, this feeling, this thought, this is the doorway. To live with insight moment by moment means to meet each experience with openness and curiosity. When you feel anger, you don't have to push it away or act it out. You can simply notice. This is what anger feels like. This is how the body tightens. This is how the mind tells stories. And in seeing it clearly, something shifts. You are no longer the anger. You are the awareness of it. And that awareness has no chains. The same is true with fear. Fear often arrives suddenly. The heart races. The thoughts spiral. The breath shortens. The future becomes dark. But if you pause and really observe, without trying to change anything, you begin to understand. You see that fear is not a monster. It is a process. It rises. It peaks. It passes. You don't have to fight it. You just have to stay with it. And in staying, you grow stronger. You see through the illusion. That is insight. That is freedom. This kind of insight does not require special knowledge. It does not depend on words, beliefs, or rituals. It comes from direct seeing. It is when the mind becomes like a still lake, reflecting everything clearly. A restless mind cannot see deeply. A scattered mind only touches the surface. But a quiet, steady mind begins to see the truth of things, not the truth we imagine, but the truth that is right in front of us. And what is this truth? Everything changes. Every thought, every feeling, every experience comes and goes. Nothing stays. Even the strongest emotion eventually dissolves. Even the sharpest pain fades. Even joy rises and falls. This is not something to be sad about. It is a key to freedom. Because if nothing is permanent, you do not have to cling. If all things pass, you do not have to fear. If the mind can see this clearly, it stops running. It relaxes. It opens. But this insight is not dry. It is alive. It is not just seeing that things change. It is feeling the freedom in letting go. It is not just knowing that thoughts come and go. It is learning not to believe every thought that appears. Some thoughts are helpful. Others are echoes from the past. Some are wise. Others are full of fear. The mind that frees itself does not follow every thought blindly. It watches. It learns. It chooses wisely. And moment by moment, you begin to sense a deeper kind of peace. Not the peace of everything going your way, but the peace of not needing everything to go your way. Not the peace of perfect conditions, but the peace of being unshaken in the middle of change. This peace is not something you create. It is something you uncover when the noise of the mind quiets down. Living with insight also means being fully human. It means you still feel. You still care. You still cry. But you no longer drown in it. You no longer lose yourself in stories. When someone hurts you, you feel the pain, but you also see the causes. You see how their own confusion caused their action. You don't excuse it, but you understand it. And from that understanding, forgiveness can grow. Compassion can arise, not because it's the right thing, but because your insight shows that all beings suffer when they are lost in delusion. And from that insight, love becomes spacious, not attached. Kindness becomes strong, not needy. Moment by moment, this practice deepens. You begin to notice the space between things, the space between thoughts, the silence behind sound, the stillness inside movement. In that space, you begin to taste freedom. You realize that you don't need to chase after life. Life is already here. You don't need to become someone special. You just need to see clearly. The more you see, the less you cling. The less you cling, the lighter you become. This path is not about having no thoughts. It is not about stopping emotions. It is about seeing through them. You don't have to be empty. You just have to be awake. When the mind is awake, everything becomes your teacher. A child's laughter teaches you joy. A sharp word teaches you patience. A long silence teaches you presence. Even pain teaches you how to open, how to stay, how to soften. Nothing is wasted when the mind is free. And you don't have to wait for the perfect moment to practice. Every moment is the perfect moment. The sound of traffic, the weight of your body, the breath in your chest, the confusion in your mind. These are not distractions. These are the path. Whatever is here is what you work with. Whatever arises is what you understand. Insight is not a special state. It is the natural result of deep looking, honest reflection, and patient attention. And the beauty of it all is this. The mind that frees itself helps free others too. Your presence becomes healing. Your calm becomes a mirror. Your words carry clarity. Not because you're trying to teach, but because you're living in truth. You're not offering answers. You're offering space. And in that space, others may find their own way. So keep going. Moment by moment, breath by breath, insight by insight. You are not walking alone. Every step you take in awareness is a step toward freedom, not just for yourself, but for all beings. You don't have to reach some final destination. You just have to keep seeing, keep softening, keep returning. And slowly, the mind becomes like the open sky, vast, spacious, free. When true wisdom arises, it does not stay hidden in quiet places. It moves. It breathes. It walks with you into every part of your life. Wisdom is not meant only for the meditation seat. It is meant for the marketplace, for the kitchen, for the family dinner table, for times of anger and fear, for moments of beauty and moments of loss. Wisdom is not a theory. It is a way of living. And once insight is real, once you have seen things clearly, it begins to shape your actions without effort. The seeing becomes the doing. This transformation begins subtly. You find yourself pausing more. You respond instead of react. When someone speaks with harshness, instead of being pulled into the heat of emotion, you sense the pain behind their words. You do not feel the same urgency to defend yourself or attack back. Not because you're trying to be spiritual, but because you see clearly how your reaction would only continue a cycle of suffering. Your understanding breaks the chain. And from that understanding, something else becomes possible: patience, compassion, strength. Wisdom also transforms your speech. You start to notice how words carry weight. Not just what is said, but how it is said. Words can heal or harm. They can wake someone up or push them deeper into confusion. When you speak from clarity, your words are more honest, but also more kind. You stop trying to impress or dominate. You speak to connect, not to control. Silence also becomes easier. You no longer fear the quiet. You use it wisely. Your choices change too, not out of guilt or pressure, but because you see the effects of your actions more clearly. You begin to understand cause and effect in your own life, not as a belief, but as a living truth. When you act from greed, confusion grows. When you act from fear, peace disappears. When you act from wisdom, a natural joy follows. This joy is not dependent on getting what you want. It comes from knowing that you are living in alignment with truth. This insight begins to reshape your relationships. You stop needing people to be a certain way in order for you to feel safe or happy. You let others be who they are, without losing your own center. You become less controlling, less demanding. Not because you're passive, but because you've learned that control does not lead to peace. You see that real connection comes from meeting people as they are, not from fixing them, but from understanding them. Wisdom also gives you the strength to set clear boundaries. Compassion is not weakness. It is not letting others walk all over you. When you see clearly, you also see when something is harmful, dishonest, or unwholesome. And you can say no, not with hate, but with clarity. You can walk away from situations that drain your energy, not because you're avoiding discomfort, but because you understand that freedom also means protecting your mind from confusion. As insight deepens, your relationship with time begins to change. You stop living so much in the future. You stop replaying the past. You realize that life is always happening now. And so you start giving your full attention to the moment you are in. Whether you are washing dishes or sitting with a friend, you are really there. You begin to see that this moment is enough. You don't need to chase anything. The mind quiets not because it is forced to, but because it finally sees that chasing leads nowhere. This kind of presence also brings great sensitivity. You become more aware of the small details of life, the sound of leaves in the wind, the texture of a friend's voice, the warmth of sunlight on your skin. These things were always there, but the noise of the mind covered them. Now they shine, and this sensitivity opens the heart. Gratitude grows, not as a practice, but as a natural response to being fully alive. Wisdom in action is not about trying to live a perfect life. It is about living with full attention and full responsibility. You begin to see that every moment is a chance to learn, to let go, to begin again. Even when you make mistakes, even when you fall into old habits, you do not punish yourself. You simply see it, understand it, and return. You treat yourself with the same compassion you offer others. The inner critic softens. The shame loosens. And in that space, real growth begins. This transformation is not always dramatic. Often it is slow and quiet, but it is steady. It moves through you like a river, changing everything it touches. Your priorities shift. You may no longer be drawn to the same things, certain people, certain entertainments, certain patterns. It's not because you're better than anyone. It's because your inner compass is turning toward peace, toward clarity, toward truth. And when you taste that kind of peace, it is hard to go back to confusion. And yet, you do not isolate yourself. Wisdom in action is not cold or distant. It is deeply engaged with the world. You care more, not less. You see suffering more clearly, and so your heart opens. But you are not overwhelmed by it, because you understand its roots. You know that trying to fix the world without wisdom only creates more chaos. So instead, you live as a quiet light, offering presence, offering understanding, offering the fruits of your practice without needing praise or recognition. There is great beauty in this way of life. It is not the beauty of perfection, but the beauty of honesty. It is not about appearing wise. It is about being real. And in being real, you become trustworthy. People feel safe around you, not because you have all the answers, but because you listen without judgment. You love without clinging. You guide without pushing. You walk without pretending. In the end, this is what liberation looks like in daily life. It is not floating above the world. It is being fully in it, but not lost in it. It is feeling everything deeply, but not being shattered by it. It is loving without fear, speaking with care, acting with clarity. It is living simply, quietly, and clearly, moment by moment, step by step. This is how insight changes a life. This is how the mind that sees clearly walks through the world, not as a prisoner, not as a seeker, but as one who knows that freedom is not elsewhere. It is right here, in the way we live, in the way we see, in the way we open to each moment with wisdom and care. In the end, all the teachings, all the practices, all the quiet sitting and careful watching are not about becoming something else. They are not about escaping life or rising above the world. They are about coming home. The path of living awareness is not a journey toward perfection. It is a return to what has always been here. The simple, silent knowing that can see through confusion and respond with clarity. This path does not lead to a place. It leads to a way of being, a way of living with presence, with honesty, with deep understanding. Many people imagine that spiritual life must be grand, filled with visions, powers, or some great achievement. But the real miracle is much quieter. It is the moment you wake up in the middle of an old habit and say, "I don't need to do this anymore." It is the moment you hear someone's pain behind their anger, and instead of attacking back, you listen. It is the moment you are present with your own suffering without running from it. These moments are not dramatic, but they are powerful. They are the beginning of freedom. Living with awareness does not mean that everything becomes easy. Life still brings sickness, aging, loss, and uncertainty. People will still hurt you. Plans will still fall apart. But when the mind is clear, you stop fighting reality. You meet things as they are. You may still feel sadness, but you are not broken by it. You may feel fear, but it does not drive your life. You become like a deep, still lake, able to reflect everything, but not disturbed by the ripples on the surface. This stillness is not cold or distant. It is full of life. It allows you to love more deeply because you are no longer afraid of being hurt. It allows you to act with strength because your actions come from wisdom, not from reactivity. You live simply, not because you are denying pleasure, but because you see clearly what brings true joy and what brings confusion. You no longer chase what doesn't matter. You no longer need approval or control. You are at ease with yourself. And yet, you do not withdraw from the world. Awareness does not isolate you. It connects you more fully to everything. When you are truly present, you see that you are not separate from life. The breath, the body, the thoughts, the emotions, the world, all are moving together. You begin to sense the deep interconnectedness of all things. This is not a philosophy. It is something you feel directly when the mind is still and open. And in that space, compassion arises naturally, not as an idea, but as a living response to the truth of things. The beauty of this path is that it belongs to no one and excludes no one. It does not require a belief system, a special identity, or any external label. It is not tied to a place, a culture, or a name. It is a human path, a path of attention, care, and understanding. Anyone, anywhere, at any time, can walk it. It begins wherever you are, with whatever is here. It is not about fixing yourself. It is about seeing clearly. And in that seeing, the mind begins to release its old burdens. Over time, you discover that awareness is not something you have to create. It is already present. You don't have to force anything. You simply stop getting in the way. Like clouds moving from the sky, the mind clears. And what remains is not something new. It is something ancient, quiet, and deeply familiar. It is the natural clarity of a mind that is no longer caught. This clarity does not belong to anyone. It is not yours. It is just the nature of awareness itself. And with that clarity, wisdom becomes your companion, not as an idea, but as a way of living. You begin to live with less fear and more trust. You stop clinging to what will fade. You stop running from what is uncomfortable. You meet life as it is, with an open heart and a steady mind. Even in difficulty, you know there is something deeper that cannot be shaken. Even in pain, you sense the possibility of peace. This is not a peace that depends on everything going right. It is not the peace of control. It is the peace of letting go. It is the peace of knowing that you can be with life as it is, without being crushed by it. And that peace, once tasted, becomes the foundation for a new kind of life. Not a life of avoidance, but a life of clarity, courage, and care. This is what it means to live with mindfulness and wisdom, not to escape the world, but to meet it fully, to walk through it with open eyes and an open heart, to live in a way that brings less harm, more understanding, and greater kindness. This path is not always easy, but it is always possible. And the more you walk it, the more you realize you were never far from it. You were just waiting to remember. So begin here. Begin now. With this breath. With this moment. The path is not far away. It is exactly where you are. All it asks is your attention, your honesty, and your willingness to see. The rest will unfold naturally.